Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Building Locations webinar. My name is Nick, and I'll be doing the presentation for you today. Just like all of our other webinars, if you have any questions at all during the presentation, you can go ahead and enter those into the questions area, and at the conclusion of the class, I'll go through and answer anything that has come up. So again, today's class is the Building Locations. So we're just going to go over a quick lesson overview of what we're going to cover, and then we're going to jump right in. So today, some of the topics that I want to talk about are going to be understanding your building locations, defining your building locations, adding in a new building location, and then specifying the framing options for each location. So the first thing we're going to talk about is understanding your building locations. Setting up your building locations is probably one of the most important steps in Envisioneer. Because you are drawing in a 3D environment, it is important to make sure that your locations stack on top of each other correctly. So to do this, what we can do is down in the lower left-hand corner, we have our building locations dialog, or under settings, building locations, you can launch the building locations dialog box. And as I was mentioning, we are working in a 3D environment, so it is important to make sure that you know that the relation of your building locations to grade are set up here, the height of your walls, the placement of your floors and ceilings, the head heights of your doors, windows, and openings, and then the framing specifications for your walls. It's also important to note that if you want to set up your own template, this is the first place you're going to start in your template as well. So if you are going to be designing in a specific area that has different building locations than the ones that are set up, then you would come in here, create your building locations the way that you want them to be in your area, and then you can actually save that as a template so that you can use it every time you start a new drawing. So you're not having to redo this every single time. And that's going to bring us into what I want to talk about next, is defining your building locations. So now that we have the building locations dialog box open, we're going to go through and talk about each of these individual areas. The first thing we're going to talk about is the building location and the number. So this number is actually just a reference number to the building location itself. You can adjust these in any way that you see fit. Again, by default, we number them 1, 2, 3, and so on. If you want a different number sequencing, you can do that. Again, that is up to your preference. The name of the building location is just that. It's the name that you want to give that actual location. So if you're going to be creating a third floor, you'd want to make sure that that actually says third floor under your naming area. The floor level, this is the height of the top of the floor base, your subfloor and your structural floor sheathing above your grade level, which is your ground level. And grade is equal to 0. A positive value indicates a floor level above grade. A negative value indicates a level below grade. So as you can see in our example here, our foundation floor level is set to -7'6". So we're saying that we are going to have our floor is going to be sitting -7'6" in the foundation, and our ground floor wall, or our ground floor level, is going to be set at 1 foot 5.5 inches above grade 0. The head height is the height of the top of windows and wall openings relative to the floor level. So that's going to be 6'8" above this level here. So not above 0, 6'8" from this location setting here. Same with the ceiling height. This is going to be the height of the underside of the ceiling surface relative to your floor level. And the wall height is the physical height of your walls on the building location itself. Again, starting from your ground floor level, that is going to be your height of wall from that level. And then we have framing options. And the framing options, this is where you're going to be able to determine how the walls on that building location are going to be framed. And we'll get into that a little bit later in the webinar. I want to also talk about interactive versus independent properties. So items that are interactive will update previously inserted elements when you change their value in the dialog box. So for example, if you raise the floor level of your ground floor by 6 inches, this will raise the entire building location in any higher building location by 6 inches as well. Items that are independent will not update your previously inserted elements when you change their value in the dialog box. So for example, raising the wall height of your ground floor by 6 inches will not raise the wall height of all your previously inserted walls associated with that building location. This change will only apply to the walls that are inserted after the change. So to give you an example of interactive and what's independent, so again, floor level will be interactive. Your head height and ceiling height will be independent, and your wall heights will be independent, and your framing options will be interactive. One example of why we don't allow these certain elements to be interactive is just because if you add in a wall, basically whatever the majority of your wall heights are going to be on that location is what you should specify your wall height in here. Same with your ceiling height and your head height. There may be some designs where you have higher walls in certain areas, but again, whatever the majority is, add that in here. That way all your walls go in at that height, and then you can select the individual walls that are going to be higher and adjust them under their properties. You can then raise the head heights of those areas for any openings or doors in that area as well, and again, adjust the ceiling height in that area. So I want to talk about editing a building location now. So with our building locations dialog still open, I'm going to click on the edit location dialog. Edit location button. This is going to bring up the location calculator from grade dialog. This dialog contains a diagram that can help you with your settings, which can be edited here or in your building locations dialog. To edit a setting, you simply click inside the appropriate field and then type in your desired value. So if we wanted to adjust anything in here, say our floor level, our head height, our ceiling height, or our wall height, you can adjust it here, and it just gives you an actual diagram so you can see what it's going to look like. If you make a change here, and let's say we want this to be 2 feet as an example, you will notice that the top of the wall will automatically adjust for you. So it's doing all the calculations for you as you enter in your values. So it's a very handy tool. I'm going to click OK to this. And the next thing I want to talk about is adding in a new building location. So to do this, we're going to click the Add Location dialog. This will bring up the New Location dialog box option, which will allow us to choose between 2 options, the Calculate from Existing Location or the Calculate from Grade option. The first one we're going to look at is the Calculate from Existing Location. So I'm going to click OK. Since I have the ground floor selected, it's going to be the option that is specified in our Calculate from Location dropdown. First thing we want to see is the location name. So if I'm creating a new location, I can type in a new name here. So I'm going to say 3rd floor. As you can see, I have a 2nd floor in here, so I probably want this to be relative to the 2nd floor. So I'm going to say Calculate from Location. I'm going to use the drop-down and say 2nd floor. And when I do that, you can see, again, the calculator is doing all the work for us. It automatically adjusts the top of wall to be 26 foot 6 and 7/8. And we're going to type in 3rd floor. And again, we can now go through and specify our wall heights. So we want our wall height to be 8 foot 1 1/8. We want our ceiling heights to be 8 foot, and we want our head heights to be 6 foot 8. However, I do want to adjust my floor level calculator. I do want a 3/4 inch tongue and groove sheathing in there, so I'm going to make sure that that value is added in. And I also want to add in the structural depth as well. So I'm going to go 9.5 inches. 10.5 inches here. And that's going to adjust the value for that location for me. So again, as I enter in numbers here to specify my floor level calculator, it's adjusting the top of wall for me as well. I'm going to click Cancel. And I'm going to go Add Location again. And this time I'm going to select the Calculate from Grade option. And I'm going to say OK. This will then bring up the location calculator from grade dialog box. And again, we have our pre-populated values based on our grade. So again, you can enter in your new location, and the majority of the time you're going to use this as if you're doing kind of like a separate garage or a detached garage. You just want a new location for the garage itself. And you can go in here and you can call this garage. And then you can go through and specify how you want this to be set up. And since it's a garage, you probably don't want that to be sitting that high. You probably want it to be about 6 inches above grade, and because you're going to have a driveway going up to it. So again, it's going to adjust those values for you for that detached garage. Again, just adjusting these values based on what you need those heights to be. So in our example, we've been specifying everything at the, I'm just going to say cancel this. So in our examples, we're using that 1 foot 5.5 inches. And this is based off of the new home standard construction template, which is using a 2x10 floor system with 3/4 inch structural floor sheathing. If you're creating your own template, again, this is where you're going to be making these adjustments to specify what you want your values to be based on your current area. In the PDF that I'll be sending out, there is also a little diagram that goes through and breaks down the heights as well with a full diagram for you, so you can see exactly how this is broken down, and you can make the adjustments to suit your design needs in your area. While we have the building locations open, the next thing I want to talk about is our framing options. And in our framing options, you can specify these based on location. Because you could have multiple stories above a location, some locations may need a beefier or heavier structural header over certain openings to carry the load above. So that's why we have it broken down into actual locations. So under our ground floor location, we can simply click on the framing options, and this will bring up the location framing options dialog. For people using Building Essentials and Construction Suite, you will see all 5 of these options. For users using the Pro Architect version, you're only going to see 3 of these options. One will be span tables, one will be intersection lookup tables, and the last will be your infill configuration. What we're able to do here is I can say under my load-bearing span table, I want to make sure that any load-bearing wall is going to use a specific type of span table for that type of wall. So if we click on this area here and just double-click, this will bring up the wall span table library. And in here, you can choose a preloaded default configuration from any of the options in the list, or you can create your own. And when I double click on this and I bring up the wall framing span table dialog, again, we can see what this is. And we're saying that for any span that is 3 feet or above, we're going, up to 3 feet, we're going to be using a 2-ply 2x4 header. For any opening that is above 3 foot to 6 foot, we're going to be using a 2-ply 2x6 header. And for any opening that is 6 foot to 10 foot, we're going to be using a 2-ply 2x8 header. If I wanted to add in a new one for, let's say, garage, I will say add, and I'll say, so up to 16 feet. I'm going to say I want to be using a 3-ply 2x10 header. This will allow me to specify, again, based on the opening sizes, what I want those to be. If an option is not available, so again, this is just a predefined list that we ship with the program, you can add to this. So let's say I actually want this to be a PSL header, or I want to create my own. I can just go right-click, add head sill jam configuration, and then in here I can actually go through and specify what I want this configuration to look like. So I can control the left and right king studs, the left and right jack studs. I can add in extra king or jack studs if needed. I can control my header, the sill plate if needed, the upper and lower cripple regions if needed. And then I would make sure it has a specific name. So that way it's something different than what's in the catalog, so that way it's determined or distinguishable when I go to select it. As you can see, my header is actually using something from the actual member library. If this was set to be like the right king stud where it says wall properties, this just refers back to whatever the wall framing is calling out. So if the wall is a 2x4 or a 2x6 construction, it's going to be using a 2x4 or a 2x6 member. So this is just saying refer to whatever the wall properties are and use that member. With the header, you're basically saying, well, I don't want to be using a 2x4 or a 2x6 member. I want to be using something specific. So that's why we have the member library option. We're able to go through and specify the exact member you want to use. When I say OK to that, so now we can see that it's using a 11 7/8 PSL header for any opening that is above 10 feet up to 16 feet. And I can say OK. As you can see, we have a couple of different options in here. So again, you can specify whichever one that you need for your area or for your design practices. You can create your own span table library as well. And then the same is true for the non-load bearing walls. So on the interior walls, if I'm going to be having an opening that's a certain size, I can again specify what I want that span table to reference. The intersection lookup table, this is a table that references the rules for framing different types of wall intersections. So here we can access the turn stud option. And in here you can specify what corner configurations are going to be used. So right now we're saying we want this to be a turn stud. And if we actually say OK to that, and I'll dive into that in just 1 second. We're going to go back to infill first, and then we'll go back to the intersection lookup table because it's representing something within the library itself. So the infill configuration gives you the ability to go through and control the size and the spacing of your stud members. So, and also the size and the number of the top and bottom plates, and whether or not there is blocking in your wall framing. If we double click in here, this will again bring up a wall infill library, which will allow you to again specify a specific infill or add to this to create your own infill configurations. And as you can see, there is a bunch of different options in here. And again, you can control what you want to see, and you can specify specific members as well to be a part of these infill configurations. So if I know I'm going to be building this on top of a slab, I'm going to need a pressure treated sill plate. So I can specify that I want that bottom plate or sill plate to be a specific member based on the size of the wall. And then the final setting in here is you can control is the framing rule. So by double clicking on this, you can access a drop-down menu that allows you to specify what starting point you want to reference for your wall framing. Is it going to be from the bottom left, from the bottom right, top left, from your start of your wall, or from your end of your wall? I'm just going to click cancel on that, and then click cancel on that. And then I'm going to go into our catalogs and library manager, and we're going to open up the library manager to go back into our intersection lookup table, which is going to reference a corner configurator, or corner configuration. This will just take a second to load here. So what this tool allows me to do is it allows me to specify how I want my corners to look and then the end conditions for those actual walls. So when I look at the end condition, I can see that I have a end stud, 4 stud, a 3 stud, a 3 stud energy corner. And again, these are things that you can add to so that when you frame your walls, you'll see how they actually intersect in the corners, and you can use one of these options. So For example, if I click on the 3-stud energy corner and I double click on that, I just put this into a rendered outline view, we can see that we have our top plate, our bottom plate, our stud 1, and our stud 2, which allows us to basically add in insulation into an intersection. So where those two walls will meet, I can put insulation in there, which is why we call this an energy corner, because it's going to have insulation value in that corner itself. So when you select the turn stud intersection lookup table, it's referencing these end conditions, which create your corner configurations. And just to show you quickly what that looks like, when I go in and add in a wall, and I go and I turn on the framing mode, here we can see my corner configuration and my infill configurations. And when I double click on that intersection, this is what that intersection is going to be looking like based on the building locations that I've specified. So we can see here that it's using the 3-stud energy corner because I used the turn stud intersection lookup table. And as you can see, there is a void there where I can pack that with insulation. If that's not what I want to use for this particular corner, I can go through and specify different variables or different options. So again, using the building locations and specifying how you want your walls to frame on each location will give you the preset values that will be used across the majority of your design. For anything that's going to be adjusted, so let's say a larger window, you want a heavier header above that, you can actually select that individual configuration and adjust it. So let's say I want to add in a bigger header above this window. I can go in to my framing mode and adjust the header. Instead of referring to the infill, which is a part of my building locations dialog framing configuration, I can specify something else. Again, whatever is in your building locations is what's going to be the majority across your drawing until you specify particular areas that you want to adjust. And again, if you're creating a template, this is the very first spot you want to be starting with, is adjusting your building locations and all your framing configurations as well. So that takes care of what I wanted to cover with you today. So I'm just going to go through a quick overview of what we've covered and talked about. So we've gone through and we specified in our building locations, we talked about the format of which is being set up. So we're looking at our numbers, our names, our floor levels, our head heights, our ceiling heights, our wall heights, and our framing options. We talked about the relationship of our different building locations to one another and to the grade. We talked about the wall, floor, and ceiling heights on each of the building locations. We talked about the height at which your elements such as doors, windows, and openings are placed into your models. We've also talked about the framing settings for your load-bearing and non-load-bearing walls in the project. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the questions section. So if you can please go ahead and enter in any questions you have about today's webinar. I'll do my best to answer those questions for you. One question we do get quite frequently is in regards to number of locations. The actual limit to locations is a maximum of 999. I don't know if you'll ever get to that many, but that is the actual maximum value. And I'll leave the question section open. And while I'm waiting for questions to come in, I'll just go ahead and revisit some of the topics that we were looking at. So again, for example, when I added in my building locations, all of my heights are specified here. So I'm looking at the 8'1" and an 8". So all of my walls that are in the drawing are set to that, oops, are set to that 8 foot 1 1/8. So when I go into the actual properties and under top and bottom, I can see that all those walls are at that height. If, for example, I want a specific wall to be a different height, I wouldn't change it in the building locations. I would change it under the properties of that specific wall, and then change it to be the height that I need. And same would be true for any window or door head heights or the ceiling height. So one question is, I'm going to open that up here. Will we be discussing stacked locations in a split level scenario? We can talk about that. It's, again, just how you set it up. So if I delete out these walls and I want to create a new location, I would go in here. I would probably leave the 3 that I have in here. I would just adjust the locations based on where I want them to go. So for example, I would probably want my foundation to be -4'6", and if my grade is 0, I want one portion to be at 0. I would make this level, say 6 inches. And then here I'm just going to specify that no, I don't want to adjust anything. And then this one I'm going to say is going to sit on top of the other location, so not on top of my ground floor. I'm going to specify this to be, we'll say, that would be 5'6" for now. We'll just do 5'6" for now. And just to make it easier, I'm just going to make that 8 foot and 8 foot. Okay. And we'll say okay. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking the ground floor. The ground floor is going to be the main part of the house. This is going to be set into the terrain, and then this is going to be built on top of this location. So that's why I have it set up like this. So what I would do is I would draw in my ground floor off to one side, like so. And then I can go in and say foundation. I want walls off of that to this side, like so. And then on the second floor, which is going to sit on top of that, I would add in walls like that. When I look at this in our 3D view, we can see how these locations all stack up to each other to create that split level design. So this location would be on top of this one, and then this location would be attached to this one. That's how I would go about creating a split level design, is just using the locations to stack where I want those walls to go. And right now my heights are a little off. I'm going to specify that this is probably going to be 4'6". Bring that back down like so. And again, since that's an interactive command, I can adjust this too. So I mean, I can bring this up and then say no, and then this will be 5 foot because I did move that up 6 inches, and say okay. And you can see it moves everything up for me. And then when you go to add in your roof, you would add in your roof on the actual location. So this one would be a roof on this location. And then on the ground floor, I would add a roof in on this location. And I would just make sure that this edge is set to properties, change it from a hip to a gable, like so, and then make the adjustments there. And then I could probably make roof on second floor gable. As well. And now when I look at this, we'll see the actual roofs meeting the walls. I hope that helps with your question. So again, if you have any other questions, please feel free to go ahead and enter those in. Again, at the conclusion of the webinar, I will be sending out a PDF which covers everything that we've talked about today. And if you happen to have any questions after the class is over, you can contact our support department and they'll be able to help you out with any questions you may have as well. I also just wanted to point out too that some of the framing options that we were working with are only going to be available in the building essentials and the construction suite package. Again, some of those areas are going to be restricted to users of the Pro Architect. So if you are using Pro Architect and you find that you're not able to do everything I was able to show you today, that's just going to be a limitation of the version that you have. And if it becomes something that you do need to look into acquiring, you can contact our sales department and they'll be able to help you in getting up to the next version that's going to be better able to suit your needs. I'll leave the question section open for a little bit longer. So again, if you do have any questions, please feel free to take advantage of this time so that we can get those answers or questions answered for you. Well, that looks like that is all the questions. So again, if you do have any questions that have come up after the class, just please feel free to contact our support department. They'll be able to help you out. I want to thank everybody for attending today, and I look forward to speaking with you all again very soon. Thank you very much, and have a great day.